Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'm going to call the November 6th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. We're going to accept the agenda with one change. Section 10, Item 3, Capital Projects Update is being postponed till November 20th. Otherwise, we'll accept the agenda as printed and go to announcements. Oh, yeah, Tom, can you just speak so I can confirm that I can hear you?
Here.
Okay, thanks. So Tom Dixon is online, so we'll take all votes by roll call tonight. Okay, announcements, Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded, and we have several announcements from the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority Administrator, Gary Roberts.
Good evening. Gary Roberts, Administrator, NRTA. To start things off, I just wanted to announce that with the closure of the fairgrounds lot on November 18th, that NRTA will start our new free fast fare, the ferry route that's going to be running on the 30-minute headways. And what we're going to do is we're going to start the service with the closure of the fairgrounds lot from the Surfside lot. That's not being used right now. So we will, every 30 minutes, the bus will run from that lot to downtown to cover the two fast ferry routes. We're going to run that 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And with all our routes, that will be free as well. We will resume the route when the fairgrounds lot opens from the fairgrounds lot into town when the lot becomes available. So we're going to start that on November 11th, which is 1 week prior to the closing of the lot, to give people the ability to start moving their cars from the lot. And along with that, we've decided to run the airport route throughout the winter season. And we're going to continue to service the lot to fairgrounds using the airport route until the closure. So anybody that waits to the last minute to move their vehicles will still have a bus running through there to bring them. The difference being that bus will only run to the Greenhound and not to the ferries. The current plan right now is that we will stop along the side of Vineyard Vines for the route from Surfside, and then from there we'll shoot up over to the steamship lot. We'll loop through and just continue running it on 30-minute runs from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The other announcement, we're excited to announce that we received a Tri-Transit 3.0 grant that we will continue to do the fare-free service through December of 2025. So there'll be no charge for any of the services that we run, paratransit or fixed route, as we continue on with this program.
Thanks, Gary.
All right, thank you.
The warrant is currently open for the May 3rd, 2025 annual town meeting for citizen warrant article submittals through November 18th. At 4 p.m., we have a citizen warrant article guide, which is on the town website. We urge people to read the guide. There is a lot of information in there, and it's important that you know it as you are preparing a warrant article. We have established a link on the town website for Vineyard Wind turbine blade failure damage. People who may have incurred economic damages may go on to this link and file a claim. I shouldn't really say file a claim. It's information that potentially will be used for claim purposes at a later time.
Can I add to that, Libby?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone is listening and has thought, oh, it's not me, I don't want to do it,
it's really important that people do it, even if it's just a little bit, because it impact the various industries. And I think if we get a little bit of everybody, we can extrapolate those numbers. We have some people who will take those numbers and sort of make them over this year and make them over, 30 years if other things happen. So it's really important that we get real information. And there's a lot of people who have offered to help. This is a really important way that people can help us. Right now, I just received an update. Only 6 or 7 people have done that. A couple surf shops, a couple fishing guides, a couple fishermen. So other people probably have been impacted. I've reached out to real estate and other people. Their concerns are long-term, if this becomes something that happens more regularly and what that will do. But I think the more people that can fill it in, the more that will help us. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Town offices will be closed this coming Monday, November 11th, in observance of Veterans Day. That's it for announcements.
Any select board announcements or comments? I have one. The crew of the USS Nantucket will be coming to Nantucket on Sunday for a tour of the island to learn about, the place that their vessel has been named after. And then there's a group of us going to Boston the following Friday and Saturday, for the commissioning ceremony of the USS Nantucket. And it's an honor to have a vessel named after your community, and we're pretty excited about it. So I just wanted everybody to know about that. Anything else from the board? Okay, moving on to follow-up from public comments from earlier meetings. I'm just going to quickly run through, and these are always posted on the town website on the new public comment page. On October 16th, Linda Durensis asked a question that she had asked the time before related to the documents that they were referring to that never went anywhere in terms of a contract with the Surfside Crossing developers. So the answer to that question had been provided on the October 9th. That's up on the page. I'm not going to read it. Andy Lowell had asked about having a Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board member attend select board executive sessions. And I consulted with town council, and it is pretty unusual for that to happen, for another board member to attend an executive session where the select board has purview over matters that happen in executive sessions. So I did reach out to Andy myself and encouraged him and the members of SHAB to weigh in as these matters move along with Vineyard Wind. If they have concerns or questions or input, to please send it along to us. And then Meredith Lepre had asked for an update on the negotiations for paid family medical leave. I'm just going to read this answer. The town has met with the union bargaining teams to negotiate the collective bargaining proposal related to town employee paid benefits that was approved by the voters on May 7th, 2024 annual town meeting. It was Article 37. The article accepted the state's Massachusetts paid family medical leave program. Multiple unions have declined the implementation and imposition of fees associated with paid family medical leave for their members. On that basis, the town will not be pursuing the implementation of paid family medical leave at this time. The town remains committed to providing town employees with appropriate benefits. So that was subject to collective bargaining. Okay. That's all the follow-up. I will now open for public comment. If you're online, if you want to raise your hand. And if you're in the room, if you want to start making your way down to the mic, and then I'm going to alternate between the two. So just a reminder, we have a 3-minute time limit, and please state your name for the record. And Jesse, if you want to go first.
Yeah, Jesse Sandoli for the record, and you'll have to excuse me if I'm moving a little slow. I stayed up way too late watching the election last night. I think I would have learned my lesson the last election. As you probably know, Keep Nantucket Wild is a local organization dedicated to ending the industrialization of our oceans. We feel that we represent the no longer silent majority of this island. Tonight, we present to you our coalition of 155 Nantucket businesses who have signed a petition asking you, our elected officials, to withdraw from the Good Neighbor Agreement for a number of reasons. As you know, mass industrialization of our oceans is already underway. The offshore wind turbines installed today are just the beginning of a vast effort led by foreign-owned oil and gas companies to install 1,300 wind turbines off our shores in a combined lease area larger than the state of Rhode Island. It's hard to imagine. In a very short time, our seascape has become dominated by dystopian steel towers looming higher than the tallest skyscrapers in Boston, a clear and jarring violation of our National Historic Landmark status. Subsequent projects intend to use turbines that will stand 1,312 feet tall, far taller than the top of the Empire State Building, making them 53% taller than the current 853-foot turbines we see today. We cannot allow this incredibly dangerous precedent to continue to be set. These staggering visual impacts are only a small fraction of the problem. As we've already seen, offshore wind projects will pollute our waters, alter our ecosystems, contaminate our food chain, negatively impact our tourist-driven economy, and devalue our island real estate. If we allow the very essence of Nantucket to be destroyed, our island will face grave economic consequences. Cultural Heritage Partners, the law firm representing the town, has already informed us that we should prepare for more blade breaks. This is unacceptable. We feel the time is now for the Nantucket Select Board to act. Rather than continuing to support current offshore wind development at every level of government, as the Good Neighbor Agreement stipulates, it is time for Nantucket to withdraw from the Good Neighbor Agreement and instead fight these projects at every level of government and fight for our island. A point that has consistently been made by the Select Board is that you do not have the power to stop these projects. And while we acknowledge that, we believe that the full power of the board has yet to be seen, given that we are still negotiating with offshore wind companies. Until we withdraw from this agreement and instead of negotiate, fight, we will not know the full power of this board. The 155 Nantucket businesses that currently make up our coalition humbly ask you to withdraw from the Good Neighbor Agreement and do what is right for the future of our island. The verdict is in. Nantucketers and Nantucket businesses want no part in the mass industrialization of our oceans in the form of offshore wind. Thank you all for your time. We realize you're spending a lot of time on this, and that is much appreciated. We would love to be assistance to the board in any way that we can with our organization.
Okay, thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Online, Meredith Lepre.
My colleague Evie O'Connor is going to distribute the pamphlets that demonstrate our petition.
Hi, Meredith Lepre. I'm calling for a couple of things. Sorry that I can't be there in person. One, yay to a fireboat. I saw that on the list of approvals. Secondly, I'm upset to hear that the town has continued to drag their feet on the issue of town-sponsored PFML or state-sponsored. I think that you all might be slightly misunderstood on a few facts. The state law on PFML says that any municipality or town can join if they vote to opt in. And for a town, it says at town meeting, which is weird because that's exactly what we did. We did this and yet still no action. But the state law doesn't say anything about collective bargaining or unions. It says if the town votes at town meeting and votes it in, they're in. I'm happy to drop off all the paperwork to the town manager's office tomorrow after work around 3:30. As I understand town government, you all are working for us, the citizens, not the other way around. So as the select board and the town manager, we empower you to run the town in the way that we see fit based on what happens at town meeting. Yet with this article that was passed at town meeting, we still do not have the benefit. You all ask us for citizen participation. We participate and bring forth articles voted on at town meeting. And if it's something you don't agree with, you do everything in your power to undermine it. This is yet another example. Any citizen article you don't agree with, you're just going to ignore. I think I watched the NP and EDC, and it sounds like our select board member there voted last week to bypass town meeting. And it sounds like maybe it was because there were already 2 citizen articles to redo the NP and EDC that passed. And maybe members of the NP and EDC didn't agree with that. In closing, I'm asking for a legal opinion from town council on why the town is unable to adopt PFML from the state program because that is not what it says in the state law. I read it today. I'd also like to know which union said no. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. Evie?
Hi, I'm Evie O'Connor, also with Keep Nantucket Wild. I have a few more comments on offshore wind. So at the last annual town meeting, the town passed Article 78, which asks the select board to not negotiate any more good neighbor agreements, such as the one with Vineyard Wind, without bringing it to the community first. And although that was a non-binding article, it gave a very clear stance on where the community stands as it relates to offshore wind. And as far as we're concerned, as far as we're aware, these negotiations are currently continuing without the opportunity for citizen participation. I also want to take this opportunity to amplify the voices of the indigenous communities, specifically the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe. We urge the board to carefully consider the amicus brief submitted to the Supreme Court by the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe, who are the indigenous people currently on Martha's Vineyard and the living relatives of the original people of Nantucket. This brief is in support of the Nantucket residents against turbines, also known as Act for Whales, in their Supreme Court case regarding offshore wind. The Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe has deep historical ties to the North Atlantic right whale, an already endangered species whose habitat and existence is directly threatened by Vineyard Wind and subsequent wind farms. The right whale not only plays a vital role in our ocean's overall ecosystem and health, but it also holds a profound cultural and spiritual significance for the tribe. Within the Wampanoag cosmology, the right whale is understood not only as wildlife, but as ancestral connection as part of their family. But despite this profound cultural, ecological, and spiritual importance, the Bureau of Ocean Management and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have fast-tracked decisions to lease offshore areas for wind development without meaningful consultation with the tribe, and frankly, without any consultation of the tribe. This oversight is not just a procedural failure, it disregards Executive Order 13175 and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, as detailed in their amicus brief, which require federal agencies to consult with tribes whose resources and heritage will be impacted. The Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe's amicus brief is a huge deal for a number of reasons. They're incredibly expensive. They require extensive research, work, and a real understanding of the plaintiff's case. If the tribe's massive effort to ally with this case through the amicus brief is not enough, they have also asked for a moratorium on all offshore wind everywhere. Given the United States' legacy of desecrating and destroying indigenous lands and people, we ask you to take a stand on behalf of the tribe, who are the living relatives of the indigenous people of Nantucket, to protect the historical heritage and marine ecosystems from adverse impacts of wind turbines. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Evie.
much.
Online, John Walker?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, John.
Great, thanks. Good evening. My name is John Walker. I'm Vice President of the Warrant Landowners Association. And I joined tonight as a concerned homeowner, taxpayer, and really just looking to help and potentially be a conduit. I'd like to voice my concern over the town remaining in the Good Neighbor Agreement and alert the select board of my efforts to inform other members of the Civic League and their constituents. I presented at the September meeting, the annual September meeting, and that Libby was in attendance as well. It's just basically a letter on how to stay current on issues related to the offshore wind projects. I sent a letter to the 25 presidents last week with links to the town website, which I think is actually a good place to start, but then also links to the Act for Whales and Keep Nantucket Wild websites, including the petition to exit the GNA. I've received great feedback and support. Again, I would encourage the select board to engage with Act for Whales and Keep Nantucket Wild teams to have one voice in attempting to stop the future projects that are currently being planned and exit the current GNA. It appears that local opposition is only going to grow and continue. And clearly with yesterday's elections, the time is now. Thank you very much and appreciate your service.
Thanks, John.
Hi. Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
good evening. Jim Mondani, and I want to use my time here to discuss the zoning board's request for special counsel or independent counsel. I've been authorized, along with the chair, to make this request and to speak on the board's behalf. The chair couldn't be here today because of a conflict, and I'm just here to ask for your help. We've made the request. We voted on this back in September, and I've provided or answered some of the questions that you need to make this determination. And we ask that you add this to the agenda and address it. As most of you know, we have a very short time period to deal with this 40B, and it's imperative that we get that you consider this request. So I ask for your help in getting it on the agenda to discuss it in more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Megan?
Hi, Megan Perry for the record. Is this on? Oh, okay, good. My first comment was, it's directed at the county commissioners, which you guys all are. I was a little concerned by the most recent NPDC meeting where the select board rep and the chair of the select board, one and the same, felt it was okay to circumvent and avoid the will of town meeting voters. Trying to bypass the voters of town meeting because it's something that you don't want isn't okay. Citizens have put forward an article, not once, but twice, that has passed at town meeting with regards to this. You want public participation from citizens, but when the participants put forward an article, it goes to town meeting, gets voted on, town meeting approves it, and then you just try to bypass the will of the people. That's not okay. It's got to stop. So that was my first thing. Secondly, I was curious about the public comment policy questions and timing. My first question on that is, when was limiting public comment made a select board agenda item? When was that posted for the meeting? When was limiting public comment discussed, deliberated, and voted on? What was the vote? And then, was public comment regarding limiting public comment allowed at that? Again, it appears the select board wants public comment and public involvement only when it fits certain agenda and agenda items. So I'm just curious about that. And then I also wanted to mention again how uncomfortable it may or may not be for town employees, department heads, to give a proper review of Surfside Crossing to the select board. Select board's made it abundantly clear how you feel with regards to this project, or how some of you feel with regards to it. So it might be a little uncomfortable for staff whose contracts you ultimately sign to give their opinion on that. So I wanted to point that out again. I've pointed it out in the past. And then I was going to ask where things stood with independent counsel for the ZBA regarding Surfside Crossing, because I know they voted on it back in September. I haven't seen it be an agenda item by the select board yet. It was put on, taken off because some conflict, I'm not really sure what. So they need independent counsel. If you guys could make it an agenda item, that'd be great. Thank you. Oh, look, I made it under 3 minutes. You're welcome.
Thanks, Megan. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. New business, we don't have any new business. Next up is approval of minutes, warrants, pending contracts. Do we want to take minutes, payroll, and treasury warrants first?
Sure, I'll move approval.
Second.
Second, okay. Any questions or comments? Seeing none by roll call, Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Pending contracts, any questions, comments?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Malcolm.
just a comment, I just realized
how expensive a fire truck is. Going down to the marine, it talks about purchase of a emergency and fire response for water as a boat. Is that going to also be part of the fire department or the marine department? Because I know there was a lot of discussion about the fire department having a fireboat.
It will be jointly used by both departments, the chief or the harbor master. Both chiefs are here and the harbor master's here if they want to maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Thank you, Libby. So the purchase of this boat is going through the police department and the harbor master's department. It's a great opportunity for us to collaborate as three departments. Sheila, the harbor master, has been gracious enough to offer training to train all of the firefighters to a certification level of being boat operators. So that's our first step. I believe you're also going to train some of the police officers as well. So the whole idea is if we have an emergency on the water, I mean, every one of our departments is, the best way to say it is we need each other's help. So if we have an emergency on the water, we need to work as a team. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to do this. So we've had several meetings about it. Sheila and I have actually gone and looked at the boat. It's got a tremendous pump capacity for putting out fires, but our whole focus on this is to be like mission oriented and figure out how to get responders to a scene as quickly as possible and be able to effect either a rescue or extinguish a
So it's a
fire.
joint venture. Fine, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments on pending contracts? Thanks, Mike and Sheila. Okay, seeing none, do I have a
Move
motion?
approval?
Okay.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Malcolm? Tom?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. Okay, next up, we have some gifts, and I'm going to try to find them here, find the page on my computer. I got it. So we have an agenda item for gift acceptances, and we're recommending the acceptance of the following gifts to town agencies. To the Human Services Department, a gift of $200 from Mac Davis Flooring for the Saltmarsh Senior Center, a gift of $200 from Hal Miller for Saltmarsh, and a gift of $5,000 from Nantucket Energy for Saltmarsh. To the Department of Public Works, a gift of the flagpole that sits on town-owned property on F Street, valued at up to $3,000 from the Nantucket Conservation Association. And the recommended motion is to accept all gifts for their designated purposes with thanks to the donors. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept and send thanks.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Malcolm seconded with that. By roll call, Dawn?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Let me just get my, okay, I'm back in business here. Okay, next up is Citizen Departmental Committee requests, the selection of the independent firm for the review of the African Meeting House vandalism investigation pursuant to Article 36 of the 2024 annual town meeting. And so I'm just going to walk through the process. There was a citizen warrant article that requested the allocation of $60,000 to conduct an investigation. And what we communicated through a while back is that municipal finance does not allow for the distribution of funds to private citizens in that way. And so what we did is we worked up a plan within procurement law that technically legal services are not obligated to be under an RFP. Well, an RFP is only up to a certain dollar amount, and then legal services, as I've come to understand, are exempt from that. However, the board opted to go with the process by which we asked the new police chief to look into and find organizations or entities that do this work, recommended by her peers and so forth, and her experience from off-island. And what Chief Casper did was we created a scope of services that was approved by the board. That scope of services, along with a series of questions for the firm to answer about themselves, their experience, their price, et cetera, was sent to 3 firms. And 2 responded with answers to the question. 1 firm opted not to respond to the request. And then I held a meeting with Barbara Burgo and Gail Holgate last week. And we sort of talked through the process, talked through the 2 firms, and I got their input on, of the 2 that responded, so I was tasked by the board to come with a recommendation. So I got their input, and we talked about it, and we came to an agreement on the firm, the one of the 2 firms that is now the recommended firm for the board. If you guys would like to comment on this, I'd be happy to invite you to the mic.
And Brooke, which one of the 2 was it? Okay.
Comprehensive.
Investigations, okay.
Thank you for allowing me. As you know,
Barbara, just state your name for the record for me, please.
I was going to say, as you know, my name is Barbara Burgo. I am the former chair of the Barnstable County Human Rights Commission, former vice chair of the Brewster Housing Authority Commission, where I am currently living now in Brewster, and vice chair of South Coastal County's Legal Services, on whose board I served for 10 years. As a concerned citizen regarding the African Meeting House racial slur, I did participate in a Zoom call last week with Select Board Chair Brooke Moore and Gail Holgate regarding the process to hire an investigator or firm to look into the town's investigation of the hate crime. Brooke asked me to speak a minute or 2 on the fact that I was involved in the process to select the firm. But in all honesty, I can only report that I was a participant in that one 29-minute call during which she informed Gail Holgate and myself that Brooke worked, in fact, with the police chief to draft a scope of work, not prepare an RFP for posting, which I learned today was not done. Thus, I left that meeting having more questions than answers. The Article 36 voted on during last May's town meeting by a majority of your voters asked for an independent and unbiased team of qualified and concerned citizens unrelated to or working for the town of Nantucket. Yet Brooke Moore, chair of the select board, again mentioned that during the Zoom meeting and just now that she worked directly with the chief of police to not only write the questions and a scope of work, but to select the 3 organizations who were emailed to apply. This, in my mind, is not an open process where others were not connected with or recommended by an employee or elected official of the town. My concerns are, where was the opportunity for others to submit a qualified application? I left that call thinking, how did I miss? We went from A to Z without B, C, D, E. And then as I spoke with Gail and others, I realized that this is what happened along the way. There was no RFP. We were never told that there wouldn't be an RFP. I was, in fact, in Africa while this investigation was going, while this research was going on. And I came back to this Zoom meeting, which was very pleasant with Brooke, but again, had more questions than answers once I left. How did we get here already? She did tell me that there was a firm that she was recommending that you vote on. 2 responded, a 3rd didn't. As a concerned citizen, I am very concerned that the will of the voters regarding this investigation is not being met based upon what the voters voted on last May. There was no other opportunity for anyone else to submit a recommendation other than what the chief of police recommended and 3 emails sent out. An open process wasn't very open. So with all respect, Chairwoman, yes, I did have a very nice conversation with you, but it left me quite concerned that the will of the voters is not being met here if the chief of police and you are the only 2 that had the option to make the 3 choices of who would be contacted. Why weren't we notified earlier that there was no RFP and a posting for others to be able to submit their recommendations? Thank you.
So I can respond that I did not choose the firms that were emailed. The chief did that on her own based on her experience. And the RFP, what we said was we would follow procurement law, which is what we did. And there were several public meetings where the scope of work was discussed by this board and approved by this board, posted public meetings with the scope of work attached.
Madam Chair, may I say I agree. I'm very comfortable with this process. One, the police chief was not here on the island or an employee of this town at the time of the incident. And as I recall, we discussed this whole process at least 2 times, maybe 3 times at meetings. And so it was pretty open to me. I understood what was happening. And I think it was discussed publicly. I don't know what else we could have done. So I support this process.
So could I ask one follow-up question to that, through the chair?
Yep.
So who does the chief of police now report to?
To the town manager.
And who does the town manager report to?
To the select board.
Exactly. There's my point.
Could I make one more comment?
Sure.
I would suggest that we probably could not find anyone that didn't have some kind of bias or background. I mean, your organization, if you'd done the organization, I would have said you were biased. If we had to pick somebody, somebody has to make that decision. And this process, I think, was as open as it can be. Period.
So to your, through the chair, to your suggestion that there might not have been anyone unbiased, we were looking for someone unbiased. And I always use the quote from, I remember from Daniel Patrick Moynihan. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts. There are unbiased folks available.
Okay, Malcolm.
Like you said, we're all entitled to our own opinion.
Opinion, but not your own
You
facts.
guys, we're not going to do back and forth, okay? Thank you. I appreciate both of you. Okay, so I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Just a quick question. Of the 2 that were, this can be for Gail, of the 2 that were possible to be selected, there are 2 choices. How are those, either of those biased? And is there one that is preferable? Did I explain that well? Did you understand what I'm, all right.
Did you want me to respond, or you're not looking for a response?
No, I think Matt's asking for a response from your group. Yeah.
Generally, of the 2 there are 2 options that we have. Are they both of those companies biased? And
So-
number 1 and number 2 is, of the 2, which one do you think is a better choice?
So let me say this. When we got on the Zoom call, in all honesty, I had to say to Chairwoman Moore that I had not researched all of the 2 that she gave us. She sent me, when I got back from Africa, and Gail, a website for each. And I said, it's a website. To me, who 8 years, human resources, hiring for Wheaton College, I was looking for a job description and then base the qualifications on whatever the RFP was. I didn't see a scope of work. I didn't see a posting about this, so I didn't know this happened. So I thank you for sharing that with me. If there were several posted public meetings, is that what I heard? Okay, I'm going to look into that. Thank you very much. But and I was going to try not to say this, but I got to be, in all honesty, full disclosure. You asked. When I asked Brooke Moore how she came to this, how they came to this determination, the one that was most recommended by her, and she mentioned it, and she said it was confidential. She said one was a white male, single person, part for that organization. And the other organization, I believe you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, the other organization was a white male, a black male, and a black female.
No, the woman in the team is not black, she's white.
Okay, so a white male, a white female, and a black male. And she said 3 versus 1 was the criteria that she went with. And I then said, in all honesty, and Gail remembers it, I hope also, being a black woman and what I do, you should not be also picking based on race. It was that part of the equation, and that's what I said. And she said no, and she mentioned the other reasons that I said, so you wouldn't want the town to know that you picked a group because there was a black person or 2 involved versus just a white man. And she said no. And then the conversation couldn't continue because she said she had a meeting and this is what they were going to do. And she was going to recommend it at this meeting tonight. And then she was going to ask for a vote. And I said to the folks, the train has already left the station. They've already made their opinion. I didn't want to play the race card, but that's what I was told. It was based on partially race and 3 people.
All right, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. Gail?
Okay. I had something written here. The things that we talked about never happened. They have not been done. And we find ourselves tonight getting ready to vote. You know, votes coming up. We were under the impression that there would be an RFP. An RFP never even came up. I never saw any. And I'm trying to say this politely, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. So I'll go to 2 organizations that Brooke and the police chief recommended. This isn't what we voted on. We voted on that we were going to, did you hear back from us, Brooke?
I don't understand. Hear back from you about what, Gail?
Well, I don't know what happened. And I'm listening, and now this is ready for a vote, and you've said that you've already met, and evidently I missed the whole thing. That's all. So I'm sorry. I guess it sounds very confusing to you. I believe that you all met with this and the scope of work that was developed and emailed to 3 organizations recommended by the police chief, but I didn't see any of them.
We will find it in the packet and send it to you. This was discussed at 2 select board meetings that I recall.
And we've given the information.
Okay, can you tell me the date of that? Thank you.
Gail, I don't have it off the top of my
Okay.
head.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Clifford Williams. I happened to be at the FinCom meeting when Gail was presenting our article, and it was recommended by the FinCom that I help her, seeing I'd been in the investigation at the airport years ago. We actually met with the police chief, and she was apprehensive, and I basically agree now because she thought it was a conflict to try to be part of the investigation. I basically think we should revisit the original article as written and allow the team set up by Barbara Burgle to oversee the investigators and allow them to pick the investigation or person who's going to investigate or team and have the town pay them directly. I don't think there's a conflict with any bidding laws or monies, and I think we've gone down a rabbit hole, and I'd like to see us revisit the original article. Thank you.
Okay, given that input, what's the pleasure of the board at the moment? Don?
Sorry, I'm having some mic issues. Can you hear me? I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this until the proponents of the article are comfortable with the process and the selection, because they need to trust in what we're doing. So maybe there can be some further meetings with them and more information provided so that they have the whole history and comfort level before we move forward. So I would make a motion to delay this until it's all worked out.
I'll second the motion. It's a little frustrating because we really are, and Burke is really trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying, and so I think delaying it, but we've got to find a process that gets us so that, so we're on the same page, so that there is trust in this. And I think that's, but we also, I don't think this can't go on forever because, no one's going to remember. They're all going to be retired, and, how are we even going to be able to do this? So we need to do this relatively quickly. Anyway.
Well.
So we have a motion, and it's been seconded. Malcolm?
No, that's all right. I will go with my other colleagues because there obviously isn't trust, although I do believe nothing is perfect. It was discussed at 2 meetings. I think it was pretty clear what the process was, but if it's not clear now, then we can't go forward.
I agree. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Tom?
I think there may have been some cross wires, and that's unfortunate. I was aware of I agree with Malcolm, what he said before. I was aware of the process. I think we laid it out as best as possible, and maybe that's not good enough. So I agree with our colleagues' comments. And I have full confidence in the police chief to make an independent judgment on who would be qualified and who has the pedigree to do this investigation. But if the proponents of the original article and my colleagues aren't in favor of moving this forward at the moment, then let's get everybody back to the table, so to speak, so we can hopefully move forward, as Matt said, in an expeditious way.
And one other comment, I was not aware of the sexes or races of any of the applicants, and I would have picked the other applicant because they were half the cost of the other one. But that's just me. I'm old school, but anyway.
Okay. Well,
I'm older school than you are.
yeah. So we have a motion on the floor. You guys ready to vote? Okay. Don?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Malcolm? And the chair votes aye. So we'll see where we go from here.
And Brooke, thank you for all your efforts so far.
Yes, agreed.
Next up is an appointment to fill the school committee vacancy. And I'm just going to clarify process that apparently the last time this happened where a school committee member resigned and there was an open seat, the school committee and the select board held a joint meeting to appoint the replacement. And we've since done some research and confirmed that the proper process is that the school committee recommends a candidate to the select board for approval, and that's what we'll be doing tonight. Did I get that, Erica?
Yeah, that's correct, except the last time we did this was 2021, and that's when we figured this out, so.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So, okay, so we have a recommendation from the school committee to appoint Vince Murphy to fill the vacant seat until the election in the spring.
Correct, 2025 annual town election.
It's annual town election. Motion from the board?
Yep. So moved to appoint Vince Murphy.
Lots of support. Okay, by roll call, Don?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thanks for stepping up, Vince. Okay, next up is the Board of Health request to the Select Board to review and approval of a policy relating to the registration of short-term rentals dated October 17th, 2024. And our Health Director, Roque Miramonte, is going to present this for us. Thanks.
Good evening, Rocky Miramontes, Public Health Director. Policy relating to the registration of short-term rentals that was adopted by the Board of Health on October the 17th, 24, is submitted to the Select Board for consideration. This policy was developed as a result of a lack of clarity in the regulations surrounding registration fees paid and the year these fees are applied to. I described the issue to the Select Board when I provided an update to the short-term rental process about a month ago. In brief, this policy states that all registrations fees paid in 2024 will apply to the 2025 season. After this year, fees for the 2026 season will be due by November 1st of 2025 and will continue according to that schedule thereafter as described in town regulations. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the board? Motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, on to the town manager's report.
Okay, we have another departmental report in a series of reports that we are providing to you on a monthly basis. This month we have Plus. The planning director is going to go through the presentation that's in your packet, and I think there are some other Plus staff here to help with the presentation. Thank you, guys.
Yes, before we do the Plus report, our consultant, Judy Barrett, who's going to do a master plan update afterwards, has a bit of a scheduling issue. Would the select board consent to flipping those items on your agenda?
Is that all right?
Didn't quite get it.
Master plan update, just flipping the master plan to ahead of the departmental report. Yes, I think by consent.
Great, thank you all. So before we get to Judy and her report, I'll just give you all a brief summary. The master plan was approved by the planning board. That's the statutory group to approve that back in 2009. It was accepted by the planning commission, I believe the select board as well, and it was accepted by a vote of town meeting. The master plan hasn't been substantially updated since that time. We have made some changes to the implementation schedule of the land use element, but that's all that has occurred. For a while, the master plan update was waiting on the 2020 census so we could get new numbers to use as a basis for the revised plan. COVID delayed that, other delays happened, and so we just got back to it. The planning board approved a contract that was also approved by the select board in September of 2023. The contract is with Barrett Consulting Group, and we have an amendment to the contract that we're working on funding for to really augment the public participation. I think the public really wants more participation than we originally budgeted for, and it's important that we get buy-in from the public. It's a really important plan. It guides our future. It's a blueprint for the long-term physical development of the island. Implementation of the plan isn't just the planning board's responsibility, though. There are other boards and committees and departments that need to have buy-in and be involved. And I know that the select board talked at their strategic plan meeting a couple of weeks ago about how you can work with the planning board on that. So we can have that discussion another time because the planning board's not here with a posted meeting tonight. But with that, I will turn it over to Judy Barrett to give you a presentation.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Judy, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I have a few slides to bring up that will probably make this efficient and clear about where we are with the process and so forth. So I'm going to bring those slides up. It's great to see the board again. I haven't seen you in a bit. So thank you for agreeing to meet tonight. So we have been working on the master plan update for a while, and I want to kind of walk you through where we are, some of the things we've run into, some of the information I think that's going to be helpful to us moving forward, and then talk a bit about some near-term opportunities for community engagement that I think will address some questions that have come up from residents about how their input will be solicited and considered. So I'll talk a little bit about just the actual structure of the project, what it consists of, give you that status report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. So I know there have been questions about what's the role of the Nantucket Planning Board versus the Planning and Economic Development Commission. I'm going to stay focused on what in my lane here, which is that we're working on a master plan under state law, which directs the planning board in Nantucket and Nantucket planning board, planning boards in other communities to prepare and periodically update a master plan for their town. The state statute, which is Chapter 41, Section 81D, has certain required components. They are listed on the left on this slide. It's a set of goals and policies. It's the land use element, which really I think is the heart of most master plans. Looking at housing, the island's economy, natural and cultural resources and how they kind of relate to each other, open space and recreation, public facilities, circulation, and then the implementation program. In discussing the scope with Leslie many months ago, we also thought it was important to update the demographic profile that's in the previous plan, but also to add a couple of elements that were not there because frankly, they just weren't part of the conversation in 2008 or 9. And those were an element specifically focused on sustainability and also an element on community health. And then we're also kind of taking a look at the status of the area plans that have been worked on over the past many years. So we have been working, first of all, on just trying to understand all the planning work that's been done, because I think one thing we've discovered in this process is that there has been quite a bit of planning work done on Nantucket. I'm not sure people all know even what's been done. And that's not a criticism of how it's been communicated out, but there has been a lot of planning work. So if you're going to try to update a master plan that was done in 2009, you kind of want to know, well, what planning has been done in the interim that may or may not have been inspired by that plan. So we've tried to go through all the plans we could find, some of which were easy to get, many of which were provided to us by the PLUS staff, some we found online, to just try to understand who's done what and where those plans stand. Have they been implemented? How do they relate to perhaps some of the recommendations that were in the last master plan and so on? So we knew what we had as a base of information to work from. And we had originally anticipated that a lot of the updating of the master plan for now would be able to spring from that planning work. And what we found in going through this process is that we needed a lot more information. So we went through all the plans. We kind of developed a process for coding what we found so we could interpret it easily. And then understand kind of, okay, what's been done and what concerns were identified in these plans, what's been done to address them, what's still relevant for this master plan update, and what's missing. Because I think that's an important part of any plan review is just this document was intended to cover certain content, but maybe there's other information that needs to be looked at as well. And so it sort of became a checklist for us of things that we knew we were going to need to look at in the master plan update. We also, however, you can't do an entire master plan update off of just documents. So we started gathering information from town staff. Leslie and Libby have been a big help in, helping us to sort of get to the right people and get information. We're still gathering it, which is why we haven't put any documents out yet. I understand how sensitive it can be to have documents put out from a plan that aren't accurate. So we're holding off on releasing anything until we're pretty confident of all the information that we have. But town departments have been great. And of course, some of the sources for the plan are not strictly from local government either, but we've gathered everything that we could. We have what's called an inventory and assessment, which is really just the baseline of where you are today, about 75% complete. I'm hoping to be able to send a first working draft of that to the Plus staff in the next few weeks. We started stakeholder interviews on September 9th. That's my crew. They were in Nantucket all day on the 9th talking to people, and between the 9th and many interviews that have been done remotely since then, we've talked to about 72 folks, town staff, board and commission members, community leaders. I know there are more. We're still interviewing people. So if you haven't been interviewed and you think you have something you want to share with us, by all means, we'd like to know. We've been working a lot on trying to resculpt the engagement plan, because I think the original concept for this update was very much going to be sort of a paper update. It's like, here's all the planning work that's been done that's not reflected in the 2009 plan. And let's make sure that that all gets there. But I think, you know, as one who's worked on Nantucket for several years, we're also very aware that there's just a lot of disagreement and a lot of friction, and people don't, you know, all agree on Nantucket about the direction of the town or what they'd like to see. So, you know, to try to do this plan based on kind of what's been written and strictly data collection, I don't think it's going to give you a plan that actually is helpful. So we've talked about how to resculpt within the budget that we have, how we could do some additional engagement. But frankly, I think the budget needs to be revisited, and Leslie and I have been talking about that. I won't get into that now, except I think there needs to be a much better focus on engagement. Meanwhile, there are two things that are going to go forward in the next couple of weeks. And one is something we call a kitchen conversation, which I'll talk about more in the next slide, that we're going to be able to provide the packets for people to use to do their own meetings in their own living rooms, according to kind of a structured framework over a couple of months. We're also going to be launching a community survey roughly in the same time frame. But I never like to just do engagement off a survey. You really have to get, I think, more input from people as to really what they care about, what they feel, and what they'd like to see. And sometimes it's hard to capture that in data from an online survey. So we're going to do both. And we have made several recommendations on how to expand the engagement process. Those are all kind of under review right now. But I just guess I want everybody to understand we are very aware that there needs to be more emphasis on community engagement, on trying to understand where folks are on a variety of issues in Nantucket that really need to be named and may not be solved in this master plan, but at least need to be recognized. So community conversation, it's sometimes called a vision kit. These are resident-led small group meetings. They are, anyone in Nantucket can say, I'd like to have a kitchen conversation or a vision kit meeting in my home. And they will be provided a packet, which we've created. We've used this many times. Other consultants have done this very type of activity. It's actually a lot of fun. People will be able to take a packet. They'll have to go to Plus to get it. But we are going to send Leslie's team multiple copies of this packet so that it's ready to go. And people will be able to go and get a packet. They can schedule a meeting in their home, in their backyard. I don't care where they do it, but they will be engaging people they invite to discuss kind of five sort of high level questions about really the island and the state of where things are and what people would like to see. There are both group discussion items and then individual response sheets. Each packet will have those, plus a map in case people want to mark something up. As I said, those packets will be available at Plus. Stay tuned. We'll have more information about exactly when they're available very soon. When the packets come back to Plus from the hosts for the meetings, they'll bring their packet back with the individual sheets filled out and any group notes that were taken. We will take that back. We will generate a literal transcript of what was said. We're not going to just do a summary. We will eventually get to a summary. But meanwhile, I think just in the interest of making sure people trust the process, we're going to do a transcript literally from what we get and provide it back to the host of the meeting to review. So if people feel that we've missed something, we'll catch it early on. We'll, of course, be drawing from that content to draft a vision for the master plan, subsequent to that vision kit and survey process. We're hoping to be able to do some additional sort of community-wide meetings in a February, March timeframe. Those ideas are still very much under discussion with PLUS staff and the planning board. And this is sort of just an image of what it looks like. This is the cover sheet. It's some instructions for the host, instructions about what are in the packet. As I said, there's a map. So if people going to the meeting want to mark something up that is spatially related, they'll be able to do that. And all of that information, as I said, will come back to us. We will make ourselves available as a consulting team to any hosts who want to get more information, who need technical assistance, who have questions, or they find something in the packet that's not clear. They can come directly to us. And as you can see, I think you can probably see at the bottom of this instruction sheet, 2 of my staff will be listed there, and we will make ourselves available. We're not going to go to Nantucket to run the meetings. That would defeat the whole point. It's really for citizens to be able to have their own meeting and to be able to report back unfiltered what they had to say. So that's kind of where we are. We're getting ready to launch this, I think, more intensive engagement process and be able to provide some documents for the staff to review and eventually the planning board as well on kind of where things stand on all those elements of the plan. And I am happy to respond to any questions that the board or anybody may have.
Any questions from the board?
I have a couple comments if I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the idea of engagement is key. It's crucial. I think it's we've got some polarization here that needs to be broken. And I think, as we saw earlier tonight, the public doesn't want to be told what to think out here. They make that very clear to us every Wednesday night. And so I hope that, by bringing people in like this, that it will, sort of help break that. I like the idea of the, having people go home and have 5 or 6 people and come back with information. I think that's great. I hope people will do it. I'm a little worried they won't, and then as in any of this planning, I hope that there's, when we get to sort of near the end, finalize who's a responsible person and the cost and the timelines so that these things actually, as we move forward, get done.
Right.
But I think I'm hopeful, that we can find the money and improve the engagement, because I think for the town to embrace this, it has to be a public process.
I agree.
Yeah, ditto.
I love the kitchen table.
It's a lot of fun.
Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just add that at Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Judy was our consultant for the year-round deed restriction and held a lot of stakeholder interviews that were confidential and prepared a report. And those were wildly successful. And we got a lot of good public input from that so we could form the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. The more robust public engagement. I think that the kitchen conversations will be an interesting start to see how the community responds and participates, see if it's effective. So thank you. Okay. Thank you, Judy. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Leslie?
All right. I'm just waiting for the slides. All right, well, the PLUS team is excited to be here tonight to do our departmental review. There is a picture of our current staff outside of our beautiful building at 2 Fairgrounds Road. Next slide. All right, so there's 6 agenda items that I'm going to go through tonight as quickly as we possibly can. There's a lot to discuss. PLUS has a lot of moving parts. Some slides in the presentation have a lot of information so that you can review that later, but staff is going to try to scroll through that as quickly as possible this evening. Next slide. The mission and goals for PLUS Basically, our mission is to coordinate land use permitting in a single location and in a professional environment. Our goals, which are pretty continuous, are to improve coordination of permitting services, to encourage professional development of all plus staff, to improve efficiency, and to continue the successful transition of our management team. Our organizational chart is on the screen. You'll see that the MOU between the Select Board and the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission is referenced at the top, and all of the staff positions are on there. Plus consists of 3 divisions. We have land use and regulatory, regional focus, and safety and code compliance. You'll hear more about all of those in a few minutes. We have 21 full-time, 1 part-time positions, and multiple on-call per diem positions. And we have 2 vacant positions right now, the deputy director and the land use specialist. Both of those have been advertised, and we're currently seeking candidates. The fiscal 25 budget, our payroll and operating combined, is just under 2.5 million. The majority of that is payroll. Our expenses consistently fit within our allocated budget. The payroll has changed some over time as collective bargaining agreements are altered. Next. For FY26, we have 2 significant EIRs on the screen, one of which, the $40,000 for a low-speed vehicle, has been removed. I think we found funding from another source for that. But we are requesting $60,000 in professional services to continue historic survey work in the downtown. You'll hear a little bit more about that later from Holly Backus. We have 2 capital requests, $8 million for design and construction of the Tom Nevers bike path. That's a really important project that we've been trying to advance for a long time, and you'll hear more about that later from Mike Burns. And $2 million for design and construction of the Pleasant Street Complete Streets project. I think you're all familiar with that. There was a presentation at your meeting last week or the week before. Next slide. Overview of Plus divisions. You'll hear from our staff on all of these, so I'll elaborate now. But before we go into that, we do have a cross-departmental code compliance work group that was requested by the town manager about a decade ago. It's organized through Plus. It contains staff from Plus, from the health department, fire department, and police department, and it coordinates multi-jurisdictional enforcement when that approach would be the most effective. And now I will turn it over to Billy Sod.
Good evening, members of the Select Board. My name is Billy Sod, and I'm a land use specialist for the town of Nantucket. As a land use specialist, I provide administrative support to the Planning Board. The Planning Board consists of 5 elected members and 3 Select Board appointed alternates. The board has 3 dedicated staff members from the Plus Department: Megan Trudell, the senior planner, Catherine Ansaro, the administrative specialist, and myself, the land use specialist. The board meets monthly on the 2nd Monday, dedicating time to review special permit requests, subdivision applications, and other proposals impacting our community development. Next slide. In addition to its regular duties, the Planning Board has also been focused on significant forward-looking projects, including the ongoing update of the master plan, as Ms. Barrett just gave you, which is a crucial framework for Nantucket's future. As we approach the annual town meetings season, the board is also hard at work preparing various articles. This includes additional measures to address recently passed state legislation, ensuring we're ready to respond to new requirements. Next slide. And just closing on this, as you can see by the final slide, the board had a very active FY 2024. And next slide. So the Zoning Board of Appeals is appointed by the Select Board, made up of 5 regular members and 3 alternate members. In addition to my role as land use specialist, I was appointed the zoning administrator in November 2023. And the board is also supported by an administrative specialist, Relisha Dixon. The board convenes on the 2nd Thursday of each month and reviews applications for certain special permits, variance requests, and appeals. Next slide. And over the past year, the ZBA has tackled complex issues, particularly regarding the short-term rental debate and Surfside Crossing 40B project. The board continues to hold additional meetings to address court-remanded matters promptly, and like the planning board, the ZBA has had an extremely active year of public meetings.
Good evening, Select Board. Holly Backus, Preservation Planner. So preservation planning consists of our historic district. As you all are aware, in 1955, we became a local district. Go through 1971, the entire island became a local district, and speed up to 2021, and we became a CLG with the National Park Service. Next slide. So the mission and goals of the HDC, very important under the Special Act, is to promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Nantucket. And of course, that act was updated in 1970. And the goals obviously are to look at and assess appropriatenesses of structures, architectural elements according with that Special Act. They follow Building with Nantucket in Mind, and they also follow Robert's Rules of Order. Next slide. With that is the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission was enacted by the active town meeting in 2005, and the responsibilities of them as an advisory board basically to the town and the select board is to apply for grants, support planning efforts on the local level, a review project under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, and review historic tax credits. And we engage with other organizations and collaborate with the HDC. Next slide. That collaboration includes being under a federal partnership, which is a local, state, and federal partnership under the National Park Service, collaborating together, which strengthens historic preservation at the land use planning local level, provides funding through the National Federal Preservation Fund, and provides technical assistance and training through MHC. Next slide. And an important note, we've been that since 2021 and received federal funding. And with that, we enforce the local legislation. I did want to mention to the select board that as of September, I provided the fiscal year report to MHC as required with our CLG MOU, and we are in good standing. So just wanted to mention that. Next slide. Through our key projects for the historic district, which obviously includes both commissions together, is our historic surveys. This is a public and private partnership with NPT, Sconset Trust, those educational components like PIN, and we were able to receive federal funding for our surveys. We're working on our final stages right now with the Brant Point area, and then we've also been able to receive CPC funds, and we're going to be kicking off this month with the University of Florida's PIN program. So very excited. Again, this effort is to help update our surveys, which are used through HDC reviews. Next slide. And then we've had some recent achievements. One, we received funding from the WIN Fund to continue some survey efforts that we can't really necessarily achieve through the federal funding. Continue a grant project that we received through the federal funding, and then myself and my colleague Nikki Sheriff both went to Florida for the NAPC's forum this past year, and that was paid for by the CLG. So we're very excited about that. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Sinatra, Energy Coordinator for the town. Since 2011, the Energy Office has focused on delivering energy projects that result in major cost savings while advancing local sustainability and economic development. The goals of my office are wide-ranging, as you can see on this very pithy slide, but in a nutshell, I track and manage municipal energy use across all town departments to reduce consumption, cut costs, and emissions. I ensure that Nantucket maintains its Green Communities designation by adhering to an energy reduction plan, a fuel-efficient fleet policy, and the Stretch Energy Code. My responsibilities also involve coordinating and promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy projects and programs, advocating on behalf of local ratepayers, stabilizing electric supply costs, and securing funding for energy reduction measures. At the Plus Department, I serve as an energy coach to the public, providing guidance on renewable energy permitting, building and transportation electrification, and net zero design principles. Next slide, please. To highlight some of our key projects and initiatives, since spearheading the town's green community designation in 2020, I have helped secure over $477,000 in grant awards for municipal energy improvements such as LED lighting, heat pump, high efficiency heat pumps, EV charging stations. I managed the Nantucket Power Choice Electric Aggregation Program, which has saved local ratepayers over $32 million compared to National Grid's pricing. And as a reminder, our new contract rate of 13.9 cents a kilowatt hour becomes effective this month and is 13% below National Grid's residential rate. I manage the town's local solar rebate program, which has awarded over $600,000 to 133 year-round residents, adding 1.2 megawatts of solar power to Nantucket's electric grid. Other ongoing initiatives include coordinating energy co-training, managing a municipal solar procurement, and co-sponsoring a WP project team this fall to assist the town with outdoor lighting bylaw compliance. And this project will include a pilot demonstration and public survey of a new bylaw compliant, dark sky friendly, lens-free decorative street lamp on Main Street starting next week. So stay tuned for further details on that project. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Energy Office secured over $500,000 in energy grant funding. To just mention a few, we received $177,000 from the Green Communities Program to replace the inefficient HVAC system at Plus with a high-efficiency heat pump system, which should be completed next week, fingers crossed. We received $95,000 from the Offshore Wind Fund to install roof-mounted solar arrays at various town facilities, including the Water Department office building. A $75,000 grant will support new energy-efficient windows at our island home. And just last week, we were awarded $75,000 from Remain to fund a municipal light reduction plan and new dark sky-friendly light fixtures for town properties. Next slide. And here are just a few pictures of our various projects that have been completed or are ongoing, including the 100 kilowatt solar project at the Surfside wastewater treatment plant, which was energized last July and entirely grant funded. To date, the system has produced over 200 megawatt hours, offsetting about 6% of the facility's load and almost $42,000 in avoided electric costs. So thank you, and happy to entertain questions at the end.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Burns, Transportation Program Manager. The work on these slides will describe to achieve the vision. The work on these slides describe ways to achieve a vision and goals of the long-range transportation plan, which aspires in the next 20 years to have a safe, reliable, and affordable transportation system with vehicle limitations that is sensitive to the island. Some of the goals and priorities are included in the following slides. Next, please. Before getting to those specifically, and to briefly describe the federally required regional planning process, my position with the region is to ensure a cooperative, comprehensive, and continuing planning program. This program is 80% federally and 20% state funded. Long-range planning uses the 20-year vision to recommend projects in the region's Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, which is a 4 or 5 year schedule of improvements. It also recommends tasks in the annual work program. These documents are all developed in coordination with the public, with the help of the town's communication staff. Ultimately, projects ready to be implemented that align with federal, state, and local priorities can be programmed in the statewide TIP and implemented through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation using federal and state funds that are available to the region. Next, please. As mentioned, tasks recommended in the long-range plan are described and budgeted in the annual work program, or UPWP. This includes all costs for transportation salaries, overhead, and expenses, and includes long-range, safety, bike and pedestrian, parking, freight, and other planning activities, as well as grant management and project management tasks. Next, please. Key projects and tasks include ensuring up-to-date and federally required programming documents, such as the TIP and UPWP. It also includes data collection of traffic, ferry, airport, and community demographic conditions, which are big pieces of the work program. And this year, we're developing a safety action plan in partnership with the Martha's Vineyard and Franklin County regions to analyze crashes on the island and evaluate and recommend countermeasures to reduce crashes in the future. As you might know, there is a joint meeting planned with the Select Board and the NPDC on December 2nd to present initial findings and discuss the array of safety countermeasures. Next, please. Ongoing projects include bike and pedestrian improvements along Walnut Road and Tom Nevers Road outside of town, and Pleasant Street, Williams Street, and Sparks Avenue within town and in alignment with the Select Board's strategic plan. Also in alignment with the Select Board strategic plan, staff has presented an array of decision points to implement parking management systems in the downtown area, and staff is currently updating town parking regulations to implement this system. Next, please. Recent accomplishments include implementation and initiation of various improvements along Milestone Road. This includes the soon-to-be underway reconstruction of the Pulpus Road intersection and extension of the Milestone path along the north side of Milestone Road from Matamoy to Pulpus bike path. Speed feedback signs have been installed in Sconset. 6 permanent traffic counters have been deployed this year and are helping improve safety and contributing to a data-informed decision-making process. Next, please. And this is a PDF, so you're going to miss out on the video. I apologize for that. Is it a PDF? We're going to go next and see if that actually works? Okay. Oh, well, we're going to miss the fun. A bike safety campaign was kicked off and includes e-bike classification stickers and the Brain Bucket Nantucket sticker, and which are available at our office, the police station, and at the schools. Sharing these with state leaders, and this is where the video comes in, at the Sagamore Bridge Replacement Press Conference was in July was a fun highlight of the summer season. Next, please. Challenges include funding and staff to initiate and oversee project development. Through outreach efforts, we hear that congestion, delays, and parking are a community concern. Opportunities include building on the success of recent transit incentives that almost doubled ridership this last year, as well as improving parking turnover and new parking opportunities downtown, and taking advantage of federal funds available for advancing the portfolio of roadway resiliency projects in and around the ferry terminals and in Nantucket and Pulpus Road. Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Murphy, Building Commissioner for the town of Nantucket. This is the first time I've ever addressed the Select Board, so it's really exciting. So the Building Division, that's my team, that's who I supervise, and they're a great group of guys. I have a local inspector, I have a plumbing and gas inspector, a wiring inspector, a zoning compliance coordinator, and I have several on-call per diem inspectors. Our key responsibilities are enforcement and interpretation of the state building code, the wiring code, and the plumbing codes, enforcement and interpretation of the Nantucket zoning code, and enforcement and interpretation of our outdoor lighting bylaw. As you can see from FY24, we've got 1,000 building permits issued. 90% of those are additions and renovations. And as you can see, there's about 95 new dwellings, just under 2,000 plumbing and gas permits and 1,200 wiring permits. Next slide. State building code compliance. The state building code applies to residential and commercial buildings, both existing and new. Existing buildings are treated differently than new buildings because they typically don't meet current codes or any building codes at all. And we have a lot of those in Nantucket. And you know, the building officials afforded great discretion when assessing the conditions in those structures. The new buildings are required to meet current code requirements, and if they can't, typically, you know, a variance from the state building code is generally required. I have some discretion on new buildings, but not a lot. Next slide. So zoning code compliance on Nantucket is primarily enforced by the building commissioner and the zoning compliance coordinator. Any state regulations allow any building official to enforce the local zoning code. So any of our local inspectors are free to do that if they have to. And Nantucket's unique in the sense that we have a zoning enforcement officer who is actually not a building official. and that's pretty rare, but he's excellent, and he's been around for a long time. Yeah, thank you. The appeal process. So there's two types of appeals. There could be a building code appeal, or there could be a zoning code appeal. Any building code appeals, it could be a determination that I make that somebody's unhappy with, or, and something like that, typically, you know, if I can't resolve it, the matter inter-office, that issue is resolved off-island. So building code appeals aren't heard locally. And zoning code appeals are actually heard locally. Obviously, you guys know that. The zoning board hears and determines any appeals of the building official or the zoning compliance coordinator. And, you know, generally when we enforce the zoning code, it starts with, you know, a thoughtful approach, possibly a site visit, maybe registered letters. We try and, you know, get cooperation from a property owner if we can, try to clearly explain the issue. If that fails, typically I have to get town council involved, and usually, hopefully it's a letter from the town attorney that might, you know, prompt the property owner to move on the issue. If not, you know, it does have to escalate sometimes to Superior Court or Land Court. All right, thank you.
Right, so just in summary, we have a really great team at Plus. Everybody works really hard. They take pride in delivering outstanding customer service. We provide inspectional services, issue permits, provide research assistance to property owners. We coordinate with other departments, and we support various boards and committees and commissions. And the next slide was supposed to be a great video, but I didn't realize there was a thing with that. So we're going to miss the video. Any questions?
I just, something, I was reminded by all of this. At some point, we had a HTC review by a consultant, and that was delayed.
Next week.
Next week? Thank you.
Glad I had an answer.
How often are we going to do this? Is this going to be a quarterly, or, you know, sort of, what's the plan?
Well, so far, we're cycling through all of the departments, and then I guess we could go back to the first one and go through it again. So it'd be roughly once a year. And if you want additional, if you want departments, certain departments to come in more often, I'm sure we could arrange that.
Right, I'm asking because we're going to meet chair and co-chair and NPDC, et cetera. We're going to meet and deal with some of that. But I think there are some issues. One is, one I would say would be, how do we make sure there's better coordination between, you know, on sort of short-term rental policies, EBA versus us. Sometimes decisions are made, and then we, sometimes by the time it gets to our level, we might have a different view of something and feel like one hand is tied behind our back because of another decision was made. So how do we better coordinate those issues? That would be one thing. I think the, you know, idea of bringing people in for planning for the master plan, I think that is going to do a world of good, I believe. And then the other is, I just think there's an inherent conflict right now with we need to look at the MOU and figure out, you know, sort of what parts of that are working and what aren't. There was a discussion on last Thursday or Friday of evaluations, et cetera, and, you know, I'm not going to get into the details of that right now, but I think there's things like that, topics like that we need to put on the table and figure out, because it's to make it better for everybody. So anyway.
Yeah, I would just emphasize, I think we need to look at the MOU again soon. I mean, when I see your organizational chart, it gets confusing when I see you and Libby reporting to two different people at the same time, and my logical brain has trouble with that. So we need to address that.
So when we had the joint meeting between the NPDC and the select board, what we agreed to was that the chairs and vice chairs would meet. And it's been a scheduling challenge, and that is on the calendar. So that is happening. So that will continue the collaboration between planning and select board over time. And I think at that joint meeting, the idea was we would sort of continue to monitor the effectiveness of the MOU and are there any changes that are needed? And so that will be part of that dialogue.
Yeah, that's why I'm not delving into it, but I wanted to, I just don't want to drop it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks to your entire team. Thanks, everybody.
Moving on, town manager, and thank you all, Plus staff. The Plus staff gets a lot of customer appreciation emails, perhaps more than a lot of other departments, in fact. So thank you guys for your hard work. Of course, all departments are excellent. Okay, so the item there, overview of fiscal 26 proposed capital, that is put off, as we said earlier, till November 20th. The solid waste facility operations request for proposals update. I just want to give you a little background on this. This is merely an update. No action is required from the board. So just to remind everybody of a little bit of a history on this, we have a contract operator right now, Waste Options, that currently manages the solid waste operations at the 188 Nantucket Road site, which is where the solid waste facility is. They operate the composter to process incoming mixed solid waste and wastewater treatment plant sludge. They operate the materials recovery facility, the MRF, and marketable recyclables. They oversee those items for hopefully transport off island and sale if possible. The operation of the transfer station to ship construction and demolition, C&D waste, non-recyclable, non-compostable, NERNIC waste, difficult to manage waste and residuals to the mainland. They have a yard waste composting operation, and also there is mulching of brush and landscape waste. Cells of the landfill are used for compost residuals and processed sludge. They maintain the site overall, and they operate the scale and the scale house. The total cost to operate the facility in fiscal 24, the fiscal year we just completed in June, was approximately $14.1 million. The existing waste services agreement expires November 30th, 2025. In anticipation of the expiration of that agreement, after over 2 years of preparation, we've developed an RFP. It was issued in June of 2024 under Mass Procurement Law, Chapter 30B. It includes a new waste service agreement template, and it sought detailed technical and price proposals. Those are separately submitted, separately evaluated. A pre-proposal conference and site tour was held on June 30th, 2024, this past summer. It was well attended by multiple potential proposers. The RFP deadline was September 26th. One proposal was received from Waste Options, our current operator. Pursuant to the general laws, an evaluation committee was established. That committee includes the solid waste director, the finance director, myself, a member of the capital program committee, and our solid waste consultant, George Aronson. By the way, George is online, as well as the team. I think everybody's on there who has been reviewing the technical proposal. Thank you, guys. It's been quite a lot of detailed work. The RFP is evaluated for several criteria, including completeness and compliance with the RFP's requirements. And we are currently determining the need for clarification of waste service agreement issues. The price proposals were open last week. The technical evaluation remains in progress. And those are not public until we have formally completed our review. No action, as I said, is required by the board. Right now, it's just an update, and we will be back to you when our price proposal review is complete. And I would look to the team to see if I missed anything that you guys think is important for the board to know right now. I don't see anybody jumping in.
Yep, I don't see anyone jumping in to add anything.
Okay. So more later, but any questions for now that anybody has? Okay. Thank you, team, very much. Okay. The continued preliminary review of town-sponsored warrant articles for the 2025 annual town meeting. Outline number 3 is in your packet. it contains potential warrant articles, and I'm going to go over with you some items that are shown. In bold. These are new from prior meetings or updated or modified in some way. So the first sort of section hasn't changed too much. The zoning bylaws on that first page there, it's in bold, preliminary updated planning list attached. You saw an initial preliminary list of potential zoning articles, which the planning director reviewed with you last week or the week before. And it's been slightly amended, and that is in your packet. General bylaw potential articles, those are all still kind of pending. Now, the noise bylaw, as you know, there was something of a proposal brought forward by the Sconset Civic Association, and we advised them to seek a meeting with the Nantucket Builders Association to see if there would be support for what they are seeking. They did get to a Builders Association meeting, and I would say the expression of support was not overwhelmingly issued. They don't intend, I don't think, to come out, we support these things. They did indicate that they would be happy to help educate people on the current bylaw provisions. So in the agenda meeting today, we, I think, more or less agreed to invite the Sconset Civic representative to an upcoming board meeting to review with you what the details of their proposal. So we're working on that. Contract Review Committee membership. We are waiting for, so you all participated in a workshop meeting early in October with the Contract Review Committee and Council for Human Services that reviewed some recommendations that came from an independently engaged consultant who reviewed the funding allocation process and some other issues with the history of those groups and how the whole process works. There were several recommendations, and we're waiting for some response, I believe, from the Council for Human Services and the Contract Review Committee to present to the board for potential bylaw or other policy changes. A new potential bylaw amendment is added here, potential amendment to outdoor lighting bylaw. We have a street light survey project underway, and that might necessitate some changes to the outdoor lighting bylaw, and we are including the dark sky group in that discussion. Home rule petitions. So this took.
Let me hang on one second.
Yeah, sure.
What was it traffic calming signs? What was that about?
Oh.
I don't know if I've seen that yet.
Okay, that is, do I have that in there? Oh, traffic calming signage exemption. So that was like the sign that is installed right now, the digital sign in Sconset.
Yeah.
We have a bylaw that prohibits those on town roads. That is a state road, so that's why it's allowed. But traffic safety, I think, and others have asked that they be more readily put around. So the home rule petitions, this was quite a lot to sort out because we have a lot of them. There are duplicate items in the state's system, and long story short, I think I have an accurate list here of pending home rule petitions from prior town meetings, which I'm going to need some direction on as to whether or not we're resubmitting them. So right now, the legislative session, which is a 2-year session, ends December 31st, 2024. And if the identified home rule petitions here have not been acted upon by then, so we're going to have to wait a little bit for this to see if anything passes or is enacted by December 31st, 2024, you would then determine if you want to resubmit them. So just to quickly go over them, we had a bike path easement acquisition. This was a home rule petition that relates to property that would on Somerset Lane area. That was approved at a November 23rd 23 special town meeting, and we've now discovered that's going to be very problematic unless the town can come up with some mitigation property, which we have not identified where that could potentially be. So that's kind of pending.
Yeah, and Libby, on that, I've had some conversations with Mike Burns about that, and there may be a way to plan that road differently so that we don't even need
Yep.
that easement, move the road layout to the north and have the bike path in the road layout instead of, so everybody's coming together now. That project is now being considered jointly across everybody who needs to be involved, so it may become moot.
Good. The Community Housing Bank, as you all know, this has been through town meetings several times, and we'll need to decide if you want to put it forward again. I think there was some hope that the Affordable Homes Act might negate the need for this, but it seems like perhaps not. The Sewer Act, there's a Sewer Act amendment. It's been pending for quite some time. I don't know why it won't pass, but that might need to be resubmitted. Same with some government study committee recommendations, the fertilizer ban, a pension bond and obligation home rule petition. All those have gone through at least a couple of town meetings. We approved a county charter amendment at this past year's town meeting. That probably hasn't even made it to anywhere, even though it seems so simple. And then a couple have actually passed, which I've just stricken those on here. There's a real estate conveyance to the land bank, which hasn't passed yet. And then some other real estate conveyances from the county to the town to the land bank or the Sconset Trust. The NP and EDC membership home rule petition. So there's a lot of discussion about this and another potential home rule petition. So I think the idea was to discuss this on your next meeting, the 20, tomorrow? Oh, it was tonight. Okay. Okay. So when I'm done, you can go back to that. And then the Coastal Resiliency District establishment, that was at the 2024 annual town meeting. It was tabled indefinitely. So that hasn't even gone to the legislature, obviously, because it wasn't approved. So, but we'll have to determine if you want to resubmit it again. In some discussions with the Coastal Resiliency staff, they are more or less advocating to resubmit it. So we'll probably have them in at some point to explain it again.
Can I go back to the NPDC membership, resubmit or not? Is that something we have to make by December? Are we discussing that tonight, or is that?
I was going to circle back when Libby's done
Okay.
and come back to that.
So just to quickly go through the rest of these things. I don't know if there's any other new home rule petitions. I haven't been made aware of any. A couple of mass general law acceptances. A new one has come in, seasonal community designation opt-in. That was a little vague as to whether or not, we weren't sure if that needed to go in or not, but town council is advising it would be safer to get a town meeting approval on that. There's this other section here, and I added a new item in connection with the airport and the potential for an article that has been discussed after the 2024 special town meeting. And I think the finance director has some discussions with the airport manager today, and that article is not going to be proceeding forward. And that's it for new items. So this outline is continually getting updated. And some point soon, I'm going to start saying, I really need you to tell me if we're going to do an article or not, because the articles need to be developed and written and understood by everybody. And little tiny sidebar that I just want to mention to the board about warrant articles generally, town-sponsored. We are going to be spending a lot of additional effort ensuring that articles that are called, that are town articles, are introduced by the responsible staff person or board member, 1 to 2 minute, whatever's allowed, introduction at town meeting so that people understand what is being asked, and that person will hopefully be the point person on the article. And we are planning a budget and capital overview at the very beginning of town meeting, less than 10 minutes, but probably with a presentation shown on the screen so that people can understand what's been approved, what is being proposed to be approved, and what is perhaps coming up in the next several years, so they know what else is going to be happening, just so you know about that. I think I may have mentioned it previously. So that's it, if you want to go back to the NPNEDC item.
I recently had some discussions with Senator Sears' office about the NPNEDC proposal that was put forth by the NPNEDC. And the NPNEDC did vote to go directly to the legislature rather than through town meeting. And I've since gotten feedback from Senator Sears' office that Senate Council believes it has to be a home rule petition. And so this board has an option to signal that we would be okay with having it go on the warrant on our schedule, as opposed to requiring the NPNEDC to do it as a citizen warrant article, which they would have to submit by November 18th. So what I wanted to do is ask the board to give a sense, feedback back to the NPNEDC, so that, because they would have to call a special meeting if they needed to go the citizen warrant article route. And we have put town council in touch with Senator Sears' office, just sort of, apparently there's a couple of different opinions about the process, and we're going to try to sort that out, but we have this deadline of citizen warrant articles coming up very fast, and I just didn't want doors to close that would preclude things from happening that the NPNEDC wants to have happen. So does that make sense?
Well, I'm happy to hear that we are going to, that the proposal is now to submit it through town meeting, because I think that NPNEDC was charged by town meeting to come up with a proposal. So I think it would be very appropriate for us to allow sponsorship of their proposal that's had public engagement and so forth to go forward at town meeting.
Yeah, I think Senator Sears helped them. I think that it would be a huge mistake. You know, they've promised town meeting a couple different times that they'd be back with something. I do think we have another article that has already passed a couple times itself. And so in my ideal world, the two would work together and come back with something. They were very close before this past town meeting and kind of ran out of time. In an ideal world, that would be what happens, because this other article is up in Boston and has been there and was voted 70-something% the last go round. So I think, I worry that if the two groups are not brought together in some manner, that we'll just be banging our head against the wall again. And I'm very concerned about that. I thought they were very close and could have come up with something, and I wish they would. So,
Thanks, Matt. Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I agree with Matt, and I would add that it's absolutely imperative that only one home rule petition is at the legislature at one time. It puts our representatives in a very strange position, in a very not good position, let's say, to try and figure it out. It's really up to us and the voters to figure out, and the NPNEDC, where the balance is. And the legislature, as you all well know, only has so many bandwidth. There's 8,000 bills in any given session. Committee time is precious. We really just need to figure the proponents of each really need to come to a compromise and move one of the bills forward, so that Senator Sear and Rep-elect Moakley can hopefully pass the compromise legislation through the legislature.
Malcolm.
Wow. Reminds me of other issues. Well, I think we're obligated to resubmit the one that's passed by, as Matt said, by almost 70% last time. If it's not comes up or approved this year. I mean, we're obligated for that. This was the town meeting said they approved it. And that puts us in a real bind if we have another one that comes along that's different than the one that's up there. So it's almost like short-term rental again, where we have multiple warrants for the same purpose and different sides not agreeing.
I'm trying to avoid that by working, well, I was trying to avoid that before last town meeting, sorry.
Yeah, boy.
May I ask, the proponent of the article that passed at town meeting is online.
Oh,
Maybe
thank
we
you.
could hear
Go.
from her about willingness to come together on this to something that can be universally supported so that we can actually get it passed through the state. She's
Hillary? Oh, can you unmute her?
Yes, hi, can everybody hear me?
We're barely hearing you. If you could
Oh, okay.
speak up
Is
a
that
little.
better? I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, thank you for recognizing me to speak on this matter. The article that I proposed at the special town meeting, it did pass with 71.5% of the vote, and it has been certified and sent up to the legislature. And my understanding from the offices up there is that they'll introduce it in the next general court, which starts in January. And then, it will go through its process. As far as, do we change that, or are there questions about that? Or does somebody else have a different idea now that they want to take another look at it? I think the question is, what's the structure of the NP and EDC that best serves the Nantucket people? We just had a whole planning discussion, and the role of the NP and EDC, what they do, wasn't even mentioned. So I think there are a lot of questions about it. If this board wants to try to, if they want to activate on this topic and discuss the pros and cons of what the NP and EDC prefers and what has been passed at town meeting, I think that would be an interesting and productive new way to approach it. But the bottom line is that what's passed is proposing a meaningful number of elected members. And what the NP and EDC prefers is 0 elected members. And there's some other real concerns with that structure that, I think it's important for this board to know that it's never had a public hearing other than town meeting where it was defeated. And it's had very, very little high profile public dialogue about what the NP and EDC has drafted. So I just think those are all things I'd like you to consider. Thanks.
Should we have that on a Wednesday night? Should we have the two entities, should we have MPDC and Hillary and her group come in and see what, and have them talk? It would get the most eyeballs, that's for sure.
Madam Chair, I would support that, because I've heard from both sides, if I want to call it sides, individually, but not, I've never had it all aired out.
Okay. I think the question I had for the board was, what would be an appropriate way for the board to be comfortable putting the NP and EDC's proposal on the warrant, right? And so what I think I'm hearing is more robust dialogue for us to understand the differences between the two potential versions.
I'm kind of with Tom. I think we should have one up there. And so, so I think we've got one there. So I would say, unless we've got to find a way to either amend that where they both agree or do something. I just because what happens sometimes is people take things personally. They go to Boston and they fight against something just because it wasn't their idea, or it's bad, or it's the person who's presenting it, or whatever. And it doesn't do us as a community much good to be doing, having our fights up in Boston. that we haven't sorted out here. Let's sort out our differences here, but
Madam Chair, I'm very sorry to interrupt. I just now learned that the attorney giving the eminent domain overview, it must be somewhere else at 8 o'clock. So just
Okay.
FYI.
Okay, so, let's put this on an agenda for us to identify a path forward. Is that make sense?
I actually sort of thought we agreed earlier to put it on next week's agenda. Does anybody remember that besides me?
We were kind of talking about,
I thought it was just, Brooke was going to talk about it and see. Tonight?
yeah. The idea was this deadline of citizen warrant articles. I just wanted to talk about the timeline with the board tonight. And then, because really the question is, in my mind, it's if this is going to go on the warrant with the board's approval, what makes the board, what allows the board to be comfortable to do that, I think is the question.
I haven't completely compared the two proposals, but I do think that town meeting prior to passing these articles that were proposed by Ms. Report did charge the NP and EDC to bring forth their own proposal. So I think it would be appropriate for us to allow it to go to town meeting. And it could be amended. We could come together ahead of time, which would be ideal, that both parties could give a little bit to come up with something that works. And I mean, I think that there is crossover between the two proposals. I do know that. And it sounds like maybe the sticking point has to do with elected versus appointed. So I would support another discussion, but I would also say, right now that I would support putting it forth to town meeting because I think the town meeting asked us to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Not having to up at the state.
Yeah. I mean, I think in an ideal world, there would be a compromise, and that if a compromise could be reached, then the article would I don't know, in essence, take back the one that's already up there and replace it with one that was agreeable among all the parties, like in a sense. I don't know what that process looks like, but okay, let's get this on an agenda. We have a presenter who needs to go. And I see your hand, Megan, and we will agenda this for further discussion. So we'll hold your comment until that time, and we'll take public comment.
Madam Chair, I just want to I doubt the two sides will agree. I doubt. I think in fairness, we have to let them both go forward. That's not ideal, but
Okay.
that's the world.
So what we've signaled tonight to the NP and EDC is we're not sure what we're going to do with the warrant ourselves, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think that their article as proposed could go on the warrant, but it could be amended. And then it's ultimately up to town meeting whether they pass it, either amended or as is. And to me, that would supersede prior votes on the same thing.
Well, we'd have to make sure that was done so that it actually
Yeah, no, it has to
did.
be done.
Yeah.
Done correctly, but town meeting can amend it to meld them more than what the differences are right now.
Okay. So am I mishearing? So the board is comfortable putting it on, but we encourage collaboration to come up with an amended version of the NP, what we voted on in NP and EDC that would be amenable to all, that might lead to us sending one up to Boston.
I'm not comfortable putting it on until we've had that meeting and seeing if we can get two together. I don't want to, because as soon as something's amended or voted, or we at town meeting, I think there should be my opinion, there should be some leverage to get something reasonable agreed upon. And I think saying, we can put them all up, I don't think I think that won't work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
So Tom, last comment, and then we're going to agenda this, and I think we'll just go there. Okay, Tom?
Last comment, just briefly. I agree with your comments. Again, I would stress that it's imperative. If we send up two, what's going to happen is that the Committee of Jurisdiction is going to see that there are two conflicting home rule petitions, and like the rep from Malden or whatever is going to say, I don't want to weigh into Nantucket's affairs. This is up to them to figure it out. And neither of them are going to get passed. So this has to be one home rule petition.
Okay.
But I support sending it based on Dawn's comments and yours.
Okay. Okay, so we'll leave it at that for tonight, and then we'll have further discussion, and we'll see where it goes from here. So, okay. All right. So I think what we will do with the board's permission is move item 2 under select board reports and comments forward so that town council can do their presentation and John?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? We had been asked to provide a primer to the select board on the eminent domain process. I asked my colleague, Attorney Jeff Blake, who was on the call. He heads up our eminent domain and land valuation practice group and has handled many, if not hundreds of cases on behalf of our municipal clients. We put together a memo for you that's in the packet, and without spending too much time on it, Jeff is going to run through that memo for you. It's really a refresher course on how eminent domain could potentially work.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having me here tonight. As John pointed out, Attorney Giorgio pointed out, we sent over a memo which outlines there's really two ways of two processes for taking a property under eminent domain in the Commonwealth. The first one is the one I think that everybody uses. It's Chapter 79. You have to meet a couple of criteria before you can take. First one being that there has to be taken for a public purpose, for a public use. Public uses are the ones that we all think of: sewer, water, municipal buildings, police stations, open space, affordable housing. Has to have a public purpose, and that we have to also provide fair market value or just compensation. In order to arrive at just compensation, we have to commission an appraisal report, get an appraisal report. Once we have figured out what the public purpose is, we have the fair market value, at least an appraisal report that says what we believe the fair market value is. We then go to town meeting and get approval for the taking and get an appropriation for the funding for such. It's a 2/3 vote. Once we've gotten the approval, then it's up to the select board to execute the taking. Town meeting authorizes you to do it, but it's ultimately the select board's decision, and they can, in some instances, decide not to proceed. So once the select board decides to proceed, they proceed through what is known as an order of taking. You vote an order of taking, you vote how much the pro tanto is going to be based on your appraisal report. And at that point, you send it over to us. We notify the property owner and we record it, and the town owns the property. The matter can be challenged. We can be challenged in two ways under 79. They can challenge the public purpose, which is very rarely done. However, in some cases, especially when you have a situation where you may or may not be attempting to, sometimes when we have projects that are going in and it looks like a town is trying to stop a project and that's their only purpose for their taking, sometimes we get a challenge, but more commonly our challenges come from the value of the property. You have our appraisal report says it's worth 2.5 million. Surprise, surprise, the other side says it's worth, 15 million. And we go to court and we go before a jury, and a jury makes a determination about how much it is. And at that point, we are given a judgment and we have to pay it. I will note for you, typically in an evaluation type of an appeal, juries are not professionals. So sometimes they come in higher than the pro tanto and somewhere usually in between the town and the other side's valuation. I do want to kind of back up a little bit and talk a little bit. I told you about it has to be a public purpose. There are very little case law out there, but there is such a thing out there as called a bad faith taking. Meaning, and I'm quoting, meaning among other things, the municipality cannot have an improper or ulterior motive in conducting the taking. The courts have found that if the taking is motivated by the primary purpose of stopping a development, for example, 40B, for example, the court could invalidate the taking. And I'm taking this right from probably one of the few cases where a court has found a bad faith taking, and that is the Pheasant Ridge Limited Partnership versus Town of Burlington. We cited it in the memo that we sent over to you. And again, in that memo, we also wanted to point out that even though we have an appraisal report, we typically advise that we hire a competent appraiser so that we have a good defensible value for our pro tanto. Understand that the other side challenges them, and the town sometimes can be required to pay, and in some cases significantly more. But that's if there's a challenge. So that's the Chapter 79 garden variety. I think in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's probably about 99.9% of the time municipalities are using Chapter 79. We typically will use Chapter 79 because, as I said to you, once we've gotten town meeting approval and the appropriation, we make our order of taking, we record it, we own the property, we do with it whatever we want. If we have a sewer project, if we have something where we want to get onto the property and just start doing it, that's the one that we usually go on. Now, there is another method, an alternative method for taking properties in the Commonwealth, and it's Chapter 80A, as in ABC, 80A. And this is something that I'm starting to see more and more of in the Commonwealth, and I'm starting to see more and more of our towns asking us to help them and advise them on this. 80A is a lot different than Chapter 79. It's similar in that we find a property that we want, that we need for whatever purpose, has to be a public purpose, of course. We get an appraisal report. We go to town meeting to authorize the taking and appropriate the funds. And then we adopt what is known as an order of intention to take. 79 was an order of taking. This one is an intention to take. And again, that intention to take has an estimate of a just compensation. We file it with the Registry of Deeds, and then we go to court and we file a complaint for the taking. And the property owner then has the ability to challenge the just compensation and the validity of the taking. If the property owner challenges it in court, which they frequently would do, then the trial is not before a jury, but the court will then appoint a 3-commissioner panel, and that panel will hold a trial and determine the fair market value, the just compensation owed. Now, as you can see, at this point, I haven't said anything about us having to give any monies out. At this point, we haven't given any money. Chapter 79, we make the order of taking, we provide them with our pro tanto, and they have a check. Here, no money changes hands. And the other interesting part of this, we get our 3-member panel. We're not going to a judge. Oftentimes, I would prefer to go to a 3-member panel as opposed to a jury, because presumably the court appoints the 3-member panel, but we will have some type of say in it. We'll be able to either come to an agreement with the other side as to who we want, or at least we can throw out some names, and we would at that point want to have appraisers on there. So somebody with some expertise versus the Chapter 79 where you can get, literally the man and the woman off the street who have no idea. But once that's done, again, we have a certain amount of time to, at that point, determine whether or not we want to appeal. If we appeal, then it goes to a jury. If not, we would pay and the case would be over. The interesting thing about Chapter 80A, as I've told you, we haven't paid. We've gone through this long process. Once the three commissioners come in and say it's worth 1.7 million, we have the ability to say, you know what? That's a lot more than we thought it is. We're out. And we can, for lack of a better word, we abandon the taking and we walk away from it. The issue with that is the statute says that if we do that, the town would then be required to indemnify in full the other side. Indemnify in full the other side is a phrase that hasn't been litigated in the Commonwealth yet. I can tell you I'm currently involved. I'm not the lead attorney in it, but I'm currently involved in another ADA taking where indemnify in full is going to be litigated very shortly, and we'll have a better understanding. But we take the position that that is for land damages because this is a taking. The other side is taking the position that they're entitled to attorney's fees, costs, expert fees, and the like. And there's been no determination in the Commonwealth. So at this point, indemnify in full would appear that it would be something greater than a simple taking of the land if we took in Chapter 80A, not taking the land, not taking possession of the land. However, because we would record in the Registry of Deeds our intention to take, that would stop any landowner from being able to either alienate, sell the property, or develop the property. So there is a certain period of time where a landowner could be damaged. I think the measure of damages for that would be almost a rental type of analysis. We essentially prevented them from being able to use the property to its fullest. Now, if it has a building on it and we're going through the process, they can certainly continue to use their building, but there is some damages there. So these type of takings, very rarely done, but these type of takings are done when, number one, we don't need to get onto the property immediately, where there's some question as to the value of the property. And the one that I'm involved in, it's a property that is being used for education. And the only entity that could develop the property is an educational entity. So we believe that there are unique valuation challenges because of that. And because we didn't need to get onto the property immediately, in fact, we were taking it for a conservation restriction, we use this. But this is the one where if you don't need use of the property immediately, and I frankly think it will take years for this whole process to worm its way through the system, then you would use this alternative process, Chapter 80A.
I was gonna ask, how long does ADA take versus Chapter 79? But I'm hearing years.
So Chapter 79 is, like I said, once we do the order of taking, we record it, boom, we're on the property, it's ours. ADA, and when I didn't mean to be so flip, it's ours. I mean, we're probably talking, once we've gone to town meeting and gotten the authority to take, we could do it in weeks. Chapter 80A, as I said, we have an intention to take. We don't make that or ripen that intention until the process for the commissioners and the like has been exhausted and any appeal to a trial court has been exhausted. So yes, ADA will take significantly longer. The case I'm telling you about has probably been going on now for about 2.5 years.
And if we don't like it, if we go through the court case and we don't like the amount or don't like it, we don't have to go through with it, but we have to pay some damages potentially.
That's 100% correct.
Okay, thanks.
So the question I have is, the case that you cited around a community that attempted to I guess, circumvent a Chapter 40B development. What was the remedy that the court gave in that case?
Well, first of all, they invalidated the taking. And I believe there was a settlement out of court. I don't know the exact amount, but there was a dollar settlement. But the more important thing for us, I think, is they invalidated the taking and the folks got their property back.
And they constructed an affordable housing project on that property.
Okay. And would that apply also to an 80A, taking that outcome could be? No, because
Yes.
Yeah.
If a taking in either one of them could be found to be in bad faith, then yes, the remedy would be the property gets returned back. In fact, in the case that I'm talking to you about, the court did find a bad faith taking. And now we're in the damages phase of it. But yes, ultimately it would go back to the property owner.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Tom?
Attorney Blake, thank you for joining us tonight. ADA sounds sort of like arbitration. Am I in a roundabout way? It seems more direct than the first method because you're sort of going into negotiation. But I, as you're saying with the bad faith provision in the first method, it still has to meet the bar for Fifth Amendment and due process concerns, right? So it's not just a town or an entity or however the legal terms would describe it, just picks a property and goes after that. It still has to meet all the bars to be able to get to that process, correct?
Yeah, you have to have a public purpose, and I caution if there is a development that is being proposed for this particular property that you have. Let's say it's an educational institution wants to expand their building, and courts will then look at it and try to figure out whether or not you are doing it simply to stop the development, or if there has been. And in order to do that, they typically will look at whether or not the town has ever had an interest in that property. And typically you would look before the proposed development, and we would do that kind of an analysis. So, but to answer your question, the bad faith or the public purpose for both are this. It's the same analysis for both.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, we really appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. It's a lot clearer to me and hopefully to the community about, what the limitations are of a taking and the processes. So thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure seeing everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you guys.
Okay. And then we'll go back up to review and adoption of select board comment letter for Surfside Crossing 40B. Libby, do you have any?
A brief little intro here. A draft letter has been prepared by town council. It's in your packet. It has input from the board through comments that we heard at your October 23rd meeting. Some items need additional policy direction. There's one in particular relating to short-term rental of units in the development. You'll see it's a side comment in the letter. And we did find out that even though we were trying to get this letter completely wrapped up by the middle of the month, there is a little bit more time. The ZBA doesn't have to submit till January. We do not want to wait that long. We want to get this done before December, but it's not quite as urgent as it originally seemed when we first got this. But that being said, we don't want to linger. Yeah.
So are there any comments or questions from the board on what was in our packet tonight? I guess the question Libby raised was whether or not we recommend that short-term rentals not be allowed in the development, I believe. And I didn't know whether we
Well,
want to talk about that.
that I think is sort of the issue. This came out of an Affordable Housing Trust comment. So they're submitting their own comments. The Board of Health is submitting their own comments. And this one indicated, I think the idea here was, it's in section 7 of the letter, affordability housing issues. The board understands the Affordable Housing Trust is commenting to the ZBA directly, but has noted the following issues to the select board in the interim. So these are items the Affordable Housing Trust has made note of for you all to think about. So this one says year-round occupancy requirement. The trust emphasizes that 75% of the units should be restricted to year-round use, defined as 10 months of occupancy, with limitations on short-term rentals for all units to protect the development from seasonal use. And the question is, does the board have a position on short-term rentals being allowed or not?
I mean, I think that we've consistently talked about this in like similarity to how we talked about Richmond, where it's not completely disallowed, but it's significantly restricted to not have weekly turnover type of rentals in there. And I would think if we get to the 75%, which is the goal, however it's going to work that we get there, I would think that would be more consistent with like Housing Nantucket's restrictions, which do not allow short-term rentals at all. But then if there are market rate units, I think there should be some form of restriction. Not complete elimination necessarily, but not weekly turnovers, would be my comment.
No, I would restrict short-term rentals, period.
What is the?
It's simple that way.
What are the developers represented in front of the ZBA, and what does the ZBA feel about this? About the short-term rental? Did they write it in their last decision? Does anyone know?
We can find out.
Okay, because as much as we can, I think we want to be, in lockstep with the ZBA. I don't think we want to be, we're just making recommendations to them that hopefully they'll look at it, and hopefully whatever they come out of, we can all be aligned, ideally, but anyway.
Dawn?
I just wanted to add one thing. I mean, I guess the reality is the restriction that Richmond put on makes it no short-term rentals because it's a month minimum rental.
Yeah.
So if it was limited to that 32-day period.
Right, so I would advocate for matching whatever the limit was at Richmond to make it so that it's consistent in some way with something else rather than crafting something new.
And make something, yeah.
So perhaps we could find out the details of that and maybe make that our recommendation. Because that was my understanding, both market rate and affordable units are basically can't do short-term rentals. And I didn't realize that the way they restricted it was the minimum of 30 days on a rental, which is great. So if someone who's living in it 10 months a year wants to go away for a month and needs help a year-rounder, needs help paying their mortgage, they could rent for 6 weeks to someone for employee housing in the summer or something and be able to get that income without the weekly turnover situation. So I like that. Tom, did you want to?
No, I remembering back to short-term rental work group and the STR subcommittee and all that. And I remember that we talked about deed restrictions and that this might sort of take care of itself. And if I remember correctly, John, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm kind of remembering that there is a minimal allowable number of days, perhaps, with short-term rentals or something like it. But I may be misremembering, so I don't want to.
There's I'm sorry, Madam Chair, there's a provision in Chapter 123, which was enacted, I think it was last November at the special town meeting, that prohibits short-term rentals in deed restricted units. So that's already in your bylaw. However, a developer could seek a waiver from that requirement, or could potentially seek a waiver from that bylaw provision. So I wouldn't rely just on that. I think that our recommendation would be that you provide a recommendation to the ZBA in terms of a restriction on short-term rentals in some fashion. And it certainly could be the 30-day period as you did with Richmond. But sure, that probably it really would be belt and suspenders at that point, though, I think.
And but we're also talking about the market rate units as well as any deed restricted units. So it's really, do we want to also have a limitation on the market rate units that don't have any restrictions on them, whatever number those end up being, whether it's 25% or whatever the final percentage is. Don?
I mean, I think the ideal situation would be that we request that the developer not allow short-term rentals except how they're defined where they don't count as short-term rentals, 31 plus days, or 1 2-week exempt rental per year.
Okay.
That's what I was going for, Madam Chair. Thank you, Don.
Okay, well, let's get a little more detail on that. We'll get the information from Richmond, and then we can talk about it before we finalize our comments. Okay. Anything else on that anyone wants to raise?
The Board of Health did submit our own letter. We have some concerns about locations of wells and runoff, but that's adequate, I think, from our point of view.
Okay.
There is comment in this letter about it. We went into more detail in our letter.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
One thing I've saw was, I didn't see here, was I think ZBA should have updated financials, full financials for their consideration when they're going through this hearing. And I think that they should get them in enough time to actually have them be meaningful. And if they don't receive them, they should be able to ask for a, extension, which hopefully the developers will grant, because everything, we're hearing that everything's more expensive and everything's changed. Well, let's make sure that we have the up-to-date financials, because that came, I think, late. That was one. Underneath and I know the ZBA knows to do this, but access roads must be 20 feet and not with no parking. I think that's fine, except I think they should be 28 feet with parking on one side or something. When you look at Amelia, you look at Macy Lane, et cetera, those, we can say there's no parking, but people are gonna park there anyhow. So let's just make sure that it's wide enough. There was some notes in here about having wide enough sidewalks.
5 foot.
5 feet instead of 4, that's great. But I think if we're gonna have, enough, if it's gonna be wide enough that people can put a car there and squeeze back and forth, then let's make it a little wider so there can be parking on one side. And I think that would make, that makes it a lot, make it, it's gonna happen anyway. Plan for it and make it right. Let me see what else I have.
While you're looking for that, Matt, so I'm going to need to know, is that a board add to this? Because I'll have to change it.
Well, really, it's a question of if it's not in there, that the access roads are wide enough for 20 foot plus enough width for parking, parallel parking, are we then, we're basically requiring additional parking spaces if that's not part of the plan, or asking for additional parking spaces?
Or we're just, if we put it in our letter, it's for the ZBA to think about, because if you make 20-foot roads, you're making, sort of thoroughfares, then people go pretty quickly, even in those areas. Whereas if you put cars on one side of the street, they all slow down, and it's safer for everyone that lives there. So maybe some of their parking doesn't have to be in lots. Maybe it can be assigned on the street. That's for them to determine. But I just think, sometimes we go, sometimes we're zoning things to a minimum, and if we just gave a few more feet, we'd be much better off. So the other one is that we talked about, and this may have been in the health, but there was a maintenance plan. sort of like we have, like you guys are asking for pillows and for the water to run through, you know, the filters. Well, there should be some sort of plan in there that the filters are maintained and taken care of. Otherwise, you're digging a hole in the ground and you're just putting all the pollution just closer to the groundwater. You know, if you don't maintain the systems properly, you are just polluting even quicker. And we have a few cases of that on island already. And so I think in whatever decision is written, there should be some clarification on that with some, you know, clearly someone who's in charge of it and making sure that it actually happens.
So you're talking about a maintenance plan for stormwater collection?
Yeah, like,
Okay.
not just, oh, you have to do the right thing. Let's make sure that we outline what the right thing is and somebody's checking it. Otherwise, we're digging holes and polluting even faster. You know, like some of this stuff is good in theory if it's maintained.
Okay. Mike had a thought. Go ahead,
I just
Chief.
wanted to address quickly, Matt, when you were talking about the 20-foot wide access. So that the access is obviously one of the concerns we have because of the size of our equipment. So in our recommendations, it's to follow the recommendation set forth in NFPA 1, I think it's chapter 13 or whatever access is. But the important part of that is it's clearly defined as 20-foot unobstructed access.
Yeah.
So that if you have the extra 8 feet for parking, as long as you still have the 20-foot access that's unobstructed, then I think you're safe. So I would just recommend in your letter, like, if you put language in, you know, in accordance with the NFPA standards, it's probably safe.
We'll be passing along your comments anyway, so. Don?
I was just going to say, obviously, I would leave the actual like parking configuration up to the ZBA, but my concern is that there's a well thought out parking management plan so that if there end up being extra vehicles, that they have a place to deal with it, or to a ticketing system, or however they're going to do it, a permit system.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if that's all in there.
And I thought you said parking management from the stormwater. You said
No,
parking.
parking.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. A parking management plan. Makes sense. Okay. Libby, does that,
Well,
do you have,
I'll just tell you what I jotted down here. Agree with restrictions on, put something in here about we agree with the restrictions on STRs. I don't exactly know what those are, but we'll find out from if there was, in the ZBA's prior letter, how specific was it? Or was it in there? Updated financial information recommended. I'm not totally clear on the wider roads with parking on one side and including a requirement for maintenance of stormwater collection systems with a monitoring requirement.
so there are a couple different things. Matt is suggesting that they consider parallel parking along some of the access roads as a traffic calming measure.
As traffic calming, yeah.
Right.
And to avoid, and because people are gonna do it, like Don's saying, they're gonna do it anyway, make it a little wider, so when they actually do it, the fire department could still get through. And, you know, so.
Okay.
In
And
new
then,
urbanism, they tease the firemen, just so you know. They call it zoning by fire truck. And if you zone by plan by zone, then you can make it slightly bigger and then it works. It's for everybody. So.
okay, so that's the one.
So the board's in agreement with that one?
And you guys, sense of the board on the parallel parking as a,
I don't need it as an absolute, but I want it to be considered. So we don't just inadvertently build 3 roads that look like Amelia Drive.
okay.
I think anything we were saying should be for consideration
Right.
by the board that's actually reviewing.
Agreed,
this.
yep. And then the other thing is to consider requiring a stormwater management plan and requiring a parking management plan. Did I get that right?
Do you want me to send you a copy of our letter? Did you see that?
Yeah, we've seen that.
You've
Yeah,
seen it?
yeah,
Because we're very concerned about stormwater.
right.
In fact, the wells are within 200 feet, which is maybe actually be a violation.
So it's both the design of an adequate stormwater management system and a plan for maintaining it. Because what we found is like at Consu Springs, it went in, it was never maintained, and it becomes non-functional, and therefore it defeats the whole purpose, right?
There's also a question of whether the wells, there's a regulatory question that has to be answered,
Which is another, yeah,
which is a whole other issue.
right, right. May not even be permissible based
It may
on,
not even permissible to build, build them, period,
okay,
from a environmental perspective.
okay, good. Anybody else?
I've got a couple other comments. One of the pages this is from DPW Director Notes. It is intended that these roads will become public, town-owned after completion, question mark? Is that, it's in the letter, is that something, I look at it and go, I kind of hope not. You know, I don't
No,
know.
he's just asking.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm asking, is that something that we want as a town?
No,
No.
All right,
personally, no.
all right, just clarifying.
Maybe we should rework this to suggest that it be clear that the roads will not become public.
Yeah. They're not eligible for taking by the town.
I talked about sidewalks, I agree with what's in there. There was then, whatever happened, there was, we got a little bit of, there was, I think $1 million was gonna be put aside for sewer, and I asked it last time and no one knew. What is do we know what's happened? You know, what was the result
There was some.
of the prior decision, and what is it?
I think that on page 5, public sewer, I don't know if John has any additional information about this, but it's sort of, I think it's sort of addressed here. It needs to be confirmed whether and when the developer shall be making the monetary contribution to the gravity sewer line construction as ordered in the original HAC decision before remand to the ZBA. So it's I don't think anybody knows right now, but the board's comment would be, I think, along the lines of, it should be confirmed that the contribution
That you're doing
will
what-
hopefully be made.
Yeah, all right, perfect, that's all, I wanted to
Yep.
make sure.
That requirement stays in.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay,
There was another thing that there was an ask was for energy load, because the energy coordinator couldn't analyze it without the energy load. I think that we should be asking, the ZBA should be asking and getting that in time to do something about it, or to comment on it. What was the other one? All right, it is, all right, good. Then I agree. And then the water company had concerns about water use and the water, you know, a allotted amount of water that was in there but not in this letter. I'd like to see that in there if it's a concern, but.
the question I would ask, if we have concerns about water, we should be not allowing anybody to hook up. I don't think we can identify one particular development for not being allowed to do it because of water volume when things are being built all over Nantucket and hooking up. So I just want to make sure we're.
That's not the issue, but that was a concern.
Yeah.
I would just hope that is considered and understood.
Yep.
You know, because the last thing you want to do is give something here and then be in moratorium for 4 years. So.
Yep. But were we to have
Anyway.
a limit, I think it has to be
Did you see the
applied.
specific water comment? It's on page 5. What the water manager submitted for this letter was, the Wannacommon Water Department believes the existing town permit can support the connection. There is no moratorium on connections, but this is an issue to continue to monitor.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's still there.
Yeah, island-wide. Yeah, okay. Okay. We good for now? This will be on the agenda again next week if anybody has any further thoughts or questions. I do agree that we should move this forward to the ZBA as soon as possible because we don't want to leave that, we don't want to throw something at them, you know, well
And
into
then
their
also,
process.
here's a question, just one think about it. Are they required to sign up to, are they required to be on town water, or could they put a huge well in there? Have they told us what their plan is, or?
I think their plan is to connect to town water.
Okay.
It would be, yeah, it would be difficult for them to do that.
To do a well?
Well, because they'd be less than the 200 feet. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think they could.
And also for fire suppression systems, they have to have the pressure, so that would be pretty hard to do
Okay.
on a well. Right, Mike? Yeah.
But if they're gonna get a lot of this stuff
Yep.
potentially waived, you know, if they're gonna go up and try to waive it, potentially, I don't know that this is
Yeah.
waivable, but, you know, do we want to comment that we'd like them on? I'm throwing that as an idea. Do we want to comment that we'd like them on town water for safety reasons? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I
it's
think that's in the
probably
proposal.
obvious, but.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We good for now?
So we'll revise it. I'll try to redline it if possible and get it in your packet either next week or at the very latest, the 20th.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, any committee reports? All quiet?
I was on a panel for NHA talking about resiliency. They've got a group from all over the world who's here for a month, and they're working on coastal resiliency issues, and they're from, you know, India and Japan and all over the, you know, the United States, et cetera, everywhere. And it's just interesting, and I hope to be invited. They're gonna do some presentations, some short presentations, but I think, you know, it's interesting they're here at this time. It's a great time of year, and it looks like they are really enjoying themselves. It's a good place to be doing it, so.
And another sign that Nantucket is ahead of the curve on some stuff,
We
too.
were,
And
a lot of what I talked about, and they have Vince and Lee are coming, I think, next week or some point. We'll have more details on some of the planning stuff. But what they were really asking me a lot about was, how do you get buy-in? How do you get people to agree to this? How do you decide what to do? And I explained that we have a great plan, but that's still a work in progress, that we're getting some of it, but it's, you know, and so that was a lot of it, but it was good.
Okay. Anybody want to go home?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
By roll call, Dawn?
Aye.
Matt? Malcolm? Tom?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thanks, everybody who's out there online, watching, listening. Thanks for your attention. Have a good night.